Welcome to Empowering Homeschool Conversations, your authority in navigating the world of homeschooling diverse learners. Featuring Peggy Ployhar from SPED Homeschool, Annie Yorty from AnnieYorty.com, Leilani Melendez from Living with Eve, Stephanie Buckwalter from eLARP Learning, and Dawn Jackson from Dawn Jackson Educational Consulting and Tutoring. With over 75 years of combined homeschooling expertise, experiences, and perspectives, this group is eager to share their wealth of wisdom to empower your homeschooling journey. So grab your favorite mug, settle in, and get ready for insightful discussions, valuable insights, and practical tips. Give your homeschool the power boost it needs to successfully educate the unique learners in your home.
Welcome to Empowering Homeschool Conversations. I'm your host, Peggy Ployhar, and if you're feeling frustrated, overwhelmed, or even a little heartbroken watching your child struggle with reading, you're not alone. Today's conversation is one you won't want to miss. I'm joined by Dr. Joe Lockavitch, a nationally Lockavitch, right? I said it right?
Lockavitch, beautiful. You did a great job.
A nationally recognized reading researcher and the creator of the incredible Failure-Free Learning Program. With over 35 years of research, 9 published studies, and millions of hours helping students just like yours, Dr. Joe is here to share real hope and real strategies for parents whose children are still waiting for that breakthrough moment with reading. Together, we're going to talk about why traditional methods often fail struggling readers, how you can accelerate your child's vocabulary, comprehension, and fluency, and practical things you can do right now at your kitchen table to unlock your child's potential. And if you're looking for even more support, resources, and encouragement for your unique homeschooling journey, be sure to visit Homeschool Heroes at spedhomeschool.com. It's a place just created for you, for families like yours. Get ready for the encouraging and practical conversation that's just might change the way your child sees reading and themselves. Let's welcome Dr. Joe to the show. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Peggy. It's an honor to be here, and I am so excited to have this opportunity to speak to you and to share some hopefully exciting research and data and good news to parents.
That's great, because our parents need so much encouragement and hope, because I think they often look at all the things that they wish their child was succeeding at. And it can get really, really hard. I remember my oldest didn't read till he was 12. And I put a lot of that blame on myself. And when he was ready, boy, he was ready. He was reading at a college level the next year.
Absolutely.
But it just took him a while. So I would love for you to start by sharing just a little bit of your background and the passion that led you to create your program and do the research that you do.
Well, Peggy, it's as I said, I am excited to be here, and I'm here for good news, not for bad news. And so let me just give you a brief background. I'm a former classroom teacher, university professor, school psychologist, special ed director. I was fortunate at one time to have a national radio talk show host called The Reading Show with Dr. Joe. I've got well over a dozen published articles, and I've clocked close to 2 million hours of direct instruction with chronically struggling students. And, you know, you being from the Southwest and in the greater Texas, Oklahoma area, I know you're familiar with a pillar, a comedian in the 1930s by the name of Will Rogers. Mm-hmm. And Will was famous because he had a phrase that everyone knew, and that was, "I never met a man I didn't like." And I thought that was great, but he had one that's even better, and I want to share with the audience. And that is, as we go through this, I want you to remember this: it ain't bragging if you done it. It ain't bragging if you done it. So we're not talking pie in the sky. We're not talking, wouldn't it be great if we could? We're talking about woulda, coulda, shoulda done it. And so I am extremely excited to share with you what I've learned in this reading quest, an ongoing reading quest, I might add.
Absolutely. So I've read through some of your stuff, and you believe that reading failure is rarely a child's fault. Could you unpack that for us? Why is the instructional method so critical?
Okay. Let me just share with you what when I start a talk like this, I always start with, if there's one thing I want to share and what I've learned so far is that I believe that we are significantly underestimating the reading ability of chronically struggling students. Now that's my frustration, but let me share with your audience the good news. And I want to say it to you as well, because you mentioned it and you were a victim. And that is, the enemy is not the student, it's not the parent, it's not the teacher, it's not the administrator. That the real enemy is the instructional approach. And when you change that approach, you will change the performance outcomes. So you did nothing wrong. And so you don't have to feel guilty. How's that sound?
That sounds great. I think parents need to hear that more and more, because the ongoing thought is, I did something wrong, and yet you have other children that prove that wrong. I had another daughter that learned to read when she was 3, so it definitely wasn't me.
No, and it wasn't, and it's not the parents out there. Let me put a couple of things in perspective that
Sure.
I think that teachers, parents must know about the field. And I am first and foremost a reading researcher. So this is what I have dedicated my, I hate to say, close 50 years of working in the classroom or related to education. But reading is the most researched topic in all of education. Literally, there are thousands upon thousands upon thousands of articles being written on how to teach reading, how to improve reading. But if I were to take the world's 12 leading reading researchers, put them in a one room, put them in a single door so that they can only go through one way out, put an armed guard at that door, and told them that they couldn't come out until they had a universal definition of what reading is and how it should be taught, they would starve to death before they ever came out that door. So to say that reading, that there is a broad range of opinion in the teaching of reading is an understatement. Now, that said, let me share with your audience what I believe is the one universal reading research fact that you can bet the house on. It has never been proven not to be true. Would you say that it's worth your listening to me run my mouth if I could share that one fact with your audience?
Absolutely. They would love that.
Here we go. All reading programs work. So I'm not here to argue methodology. I'm not here to argue anything. All reading programs work. But, and I know you're going to ask, but what, Dr. Joe?
Yes, exactly. I want to know.
That's an excellent question. I don't know how you came up with that question, Peg. Now, let me tell you what the but is. But not for all kids. But not for all kids. Regardless of the hype you hear, regardless of what you hear in the public media, regardless of what's being said about back to basics and all of the other stuff, let me share with you this. In all of the teaching of reading, and I've already shown to you that it is the most researched topic in all of education. In all of those, There has never, ever, ever been a large-scale reading research study to show one program to be 100% successful for all kids in all situations.
I believe that.
So now what that means then is this. If your child is having difficulty, the first thing you should do is not look at your child.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing you should do is say, what's causing the difficulty?
Mm-hmm.
What type of approach is being utilized that is preventing my child from reaching what I consider to be the characteristics of good reading instruction? One of my arguments with special ed, and I'm glad we're talking special ed.
Yeah.
I once had a colleague that once said special ed is neither special nor is it education. I won't argue with that. But what I am saying is this. Many, many, many times what we have is a situation where we're blaming the victim.
Yeah.
And that's my mission. Now I'm going to start to get passionate, but I've dedicated my entire life to letting people know that your child is not the victim. Excuse me, is not the cause of the problem. Your child is the victim.
Yeah.
It's like this. Imagine you're in New York City or Houston. You're in downtown Houston and it's rush hour. You're committing the great pedestrian sin of jaywalking. And you rush out into the traffic, and Peggy, you get hit by the car. Now, you are just lying in the middle of the road. You are in pain. You're not sure if you're going to make it. And all of a sudden, in the distance, faint in the beginning, you start to hear a sound. And that sound gets louder and louder. And it's a siren. And in your mind, you're saying, oh, they're coming. They're coming to help me. Got where I'm coming from now?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, when the ambulance arrives, it drives over you a couple of times and yells at you for being stupid and being in the street. We're blaming the victim. The issue is not the victim. So often, 99% of reading interventions that are out there are based on what I call the RD model. Now, I'm based on what's known as the CS model. RD versus CS. 99% are in RD. Less than 1% is in CS. I know you're going to ask this question, Peggy.
So I don't know what the difference is on those, and I'm pretty certain my audience doesn't either. So I'd love for you to tell us what that is.
RD stands for remediation of the deficit. Remediation of the deficit. And what happens is that you go into an IEP meeting, you go and you spend good money to have an evaluation. And what you get then is a list of all of the things that are wrong.
Yes.
And not only is it a list of all of the things that are wrong, then the instruction is based on the notion of, now that these are the things that are wrong, what we're going to do is we're going to spend all of our time and energy looking at all of the things that are wrong and remediate or eliminate them.
Yeah.
I don't like
and that's why a lot of parents homeschool, because they don't believe in that.
That's right.
Yet they replace it with curriculum that does that.
And that's exactly right. So what's CS?
Yes, exactly. We'd love to know.
CS stands for capitalize on strength. Capitalize on strength.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. When I was a professor at the University of South Carolina, one of the things that I always argued was having a different definition of the term LD. And you know, and I know in special ed, LD stands for
learning
learning
Or-
disabilities.
Yeah.
My definition has always been that that's a misnomer. What it should be is learning different. And when you operate from the principle of learning different, then all of a sudden good things start to happen.
Yes.
How are we
Absolutely.
doing so far?
Really good, because we actually on our website offer a test called MindPrint that actually maps a child's brain and gives parents strategies to how their child's brain works. So so we are completely on the same page as you. And we believe that every child is gifted. You know, their brains sometimes work differently than a lot of curriculum developers create products for. So I'm super excited that you're sharing from this perspective with us versus let's buckle down and work on the things your child's bad at, because it defeats the child. It actually makes them want to learn less.
Well, and not only that, and you hit the nail right on the head. One of the other problems that you have is when you start getting into that notion, you start falling into a fallacy that really drives me crazy. The problem that you have is a lot of times once the kids are classified as special ed, what they get is slower, they get lower, and they get less. And my attitude has been they don't need slower, lower, and less. They need just the opposite. They need faster, they need higher, and they need more. You set the conditions for success, and then all of a sudden you'll see that happen. I am on a mission to eliminate, and this is I had a nationally recognized cartoonist ask, "Can I formulate a cartoon based on your mission?" Because he was intrigued by what I call the 3 bad R's in education. Now you know the 3 good R's in education, which is reading, writing, arithmetic, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you know what the 3 bad R's are?
I have no idea.
The 3 bad R's are the 3 bad R's are retention, referral, and rejection.
Yes, and they're getting more prevalent too than
and
ever
especially
before.
now with the big back to basics movement.
Yeah.
That's one of the issues that one of the issues that we have right now is that this belief that if a kid doesn't read by 3rd grade, then it's too late. And then you have retention. Well, that's blaming the victim. And let me share with you a statistic. When you retain a child, you increase by a factor of 216% that child will drop out of school by age 16.
Yeah.
So you can't retain.
Yeah.
You have to look at accommodations. So what you have to do is you have to look at what's not working, and then what can we do to supplant that with something that does work. So one of the things, and that's one of the reasons why I call my program Failure Free. I started Failure Free Reading because I was on a mission, and I did the research, and at that time my wife and I had 3 children under the age of 10. I had just quit my job as a special ed director in the greater North Carolina area. We had like $700 to our name. But it was when desktop publishing finally started to come in and you could start doing things that you couldn't do before.
Right.
And so I went out there and I started selling my failure-free, ugly print black and white material. There's no other way to describe it, because I was really selling the methodology. So I would call a school district, and in sales, the name of the technique is cold call. They don't know you, you don't know them, and you're lucky if you get them. But I would call a building principal when I started, and I'd say, my name's Dr. Joe Lockavitch, and I would like to come out and I would like to do a live demonstration at your school with the student, but I'll only do it under 2 conditions. Well, that intrigued them. And they said, well, what's the 2 conditions? The first one I said is I'll only work with the worst kid you got. Well, now that really got
Oh, yeah, exactly.
And then they said, well, what's the second condition? And I said, well, if you don't see a dramatic change in confidence, comprehension, and expressive fluency within a 30-minute period, I'll walk out the door and you'll never hear from me again. When are you coming? And then I'm going. And I've done this statement, the questions, and I have been literally I have been in places from maximum security prisons to inner city schools to rural schools. Peggy, I have been to places I never want to go back to as long as I live. But I have never, ever, ever fulfilled left not fulfilling those two conditions. So I'll give you an example. I get a call from
I love that.
I get a call from the assistant superintendent of special education, Bronx, New York. And he says, I heard about this claim that you made, and I'm going to call you on it. He said, you willing to come up to New York and do it? I said, okay, I'll be there next week. So I get on a plane. Fortunately, the days of having to get in a plane are over, thanks to what we're doing right now. But at that time, you didn't. You had to go. You either drove or you flew or you were on a train.
Mm-hmm.
So I go in there and I'm going to a high school metal detector. I mean, it was South Bronx. It looked like war-torn Europe. There's just no other way to describe it. And they bring me. I'm sitting there with the assistant superintendent and his three associates, and they say, we're bringing in Raul. Okay. Tell me about Raul. Well, he started in special ed with us when he's 6th grade. He was a virtual non-reader. He's African-American Latino, and he's been with us for 3 years. I said, okay. How's he doing now? Now, he's been with intensive remediation, 3 years, full IEP, came in as a non-reader. Guess where he is 3 years later, Peggy?
Same place.
Non-reader. So they bring him in. And he comes in, handsome young man. We're sitting there. And I said, you're not in trouble. Well, that was good. I said, I just developed a reading approach, and I'll explain that later on to your audience, what it is and why it works. But I said, and all I want to do is have you try it out. Tell me what you think about it. You either like it or you don't like it, but that's why I'm here. He said, okay, I'll do that. So one of the things that I always do, and one of my beliefs is that all students should be pushed to their level. So I look at him and I'm using the methodology. I'm talking for a few minutes, but I put down a passage and I put down critical vocabulary in that passage, Peggy. And I go to him and I say, do you know this word? He says, no. Do you know this word? No. Do you know this word? This word? He said, no, and no. I said, well, look at this passage. Is it too easy, too hard, or just right? He says, too hard, man. I can't do that. Okay. So now he's a 9th grader and he's already set the conditions. He can't do it. So we go through the methodology. But before we go through the methodology, I'm looking at the assistant superintendent and his 3 colleagues who are also looking at the 5 words and the passage. And I can see in their eyes, and their eyes, they're basically saying, we've invited a madman here. We're going to have to call security because there's no way on the face of this planet that this kid's going to know these words and read that passage in a 30-minute period. This guy's a nut, and you made a mistake. So we're sitting there, and everything that I do is predicated on the notion that reading is gaining meaning from the printed page.
Okay.
As demonstrated by the ability to read with expression. If your student or if your child is not reading with expression, then by my definition, they're not reading. Now, by the way, if you're reading with expression, you're also reading with comprehension because you can't read something with expression that you're not comprehending. Does that all make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's one of the sidebars that parents can look at. Is my child reading aloud with expression? Forget whether or not they get it right.
Yeah.
The question is, are they demonstrating expressive fluency? And if it's if we're dealing with parents who have hearing impaired or deaf, are they, and some are signing, and I do a lot of work with that population, are they signing with prosody, meaning comprehension? Does that all make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I sit there and I say, do you know this word? And he tries to sound it out, and he goes, torn, tornoi, torny, attorney. Oh, attorney. Do you know what the word means? No. Have you ever heard it before? No, not really. Okay. Now, do you know, and has any of your friends ever gotten in trouble with the law? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is South Bronx. Are you kidding me?
Right.
I said, and when they get in trouble with the law, what's one of the first people that they need? What comes out of his mouth, Peggy? They need a what? They need a
lawyer.
A lawyer. Well, an attorney is nothing more than a fancy name for what? Lawyer. Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense. All right. Can you sound this word out? Well, this word is huge. I can't do it. No, you don't even have to try to sound it out. The words acquaintance. Can you say acquaintance? Acquaintance. Do you know what an acquaintance is? Well, no. Well, have we just met? Yeah. Do you think we could become friends? Yeah, I think so. Well, then I would become an acquaintance. Oh, somebody you know, a friend. Oh. 30 minutes later, he is reading aloud, just like I'm going to read right now. Okay. He takes the passage and he reads this. And this is exactly how he's reading it. The attorney and her acquaintance were astounded by the size of the rock singer's house. The house was large enough to accommodate over 100 people. I say, too easy, too hard, just right. He says, too easy. I said, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Who just told me 15 minutes before that this was too hard? Who took it from too hard to too easy in under 15 minutes? And he looks at me, Peggy, and he says, I did. I said, you're right. Now, here's where it starts getting sad, but your parents will relate to this too. Next thing I ask him is this. What grade are you in? He says 9th. I said, what grade level do you think this material is? He says, 5th. So the first thing he does is drop it down how many grades?
Yeah, 4, because he's been told that that's where he's at, I bet.
So now I say to him, Peggy, I say, no, it's not. I said, try it again. You know what he says this time? 4th.
Take it down. Mm-hmm.
Try it again. 3rd. I stop him now at 3rd. I said, nah, you're going the wrong direction. And all of a sudden, you see just a subtle movement in his jaw. He says, 6th. I said, no, go higher. Now all of a sudden, he's getting a little bit straighter. 7th. I said, no, higher. 8th. No, higher. 9th. I said 9th, 10th. I said, how's it feel to read 9th, 10th? And the kid that left that room was not the kid that came into that room.
Oh,
and when I created this program, I created it as first and foremost a reading attitude adjustment program.
Yeah.
Because our kids are beating the hell out of each other and out of themselves. And the only way only way you're going to snap that is by giving them faster, giving them higher, and giving them more, because they're their own worst critics.
Yeah.
So you
absolutely.
have to prove it to them.
Yes. Yeah.
How am I doing? A little while, I'm going to get passionate.
No. That's really good. And it's a good story to just give parents hope, because I think we think our child is so bad off. And yet I think a lot of our listeners, their kids aren't even to that point yet, to that 9th grade, 10th grade. They're maybe struggling in 2nd or 3rd.
Absolutely.
And there's
And so let me share with you what my research has found.
Yeah,
in my book, which I'm getting ready to rewrite, and my white paper I'm doing as we speak, but I wrote it 20 some odd years ago, and it is as valuable, viable today as it was then. And I call the book The Failure-Free Methodology, New Hope for Non-Readers. And what I basically said, and what my research has found, is that there are 3 characteristics of non-readers. And for lack of better terms, I said that they were PD, they were ED, and they were LD. LD doesn't mean learning disabled, and ED doesn't mean emotionally disturbed. Although when I was first started teaching, I was the teacher of the emotionally disturbed teacher. Some people still think I'm emotionally disturbed, but that's a whole different ballgame. But let me share with you again, but I'm going to preface it, because this is the one that's gotten me the most notoriety, the most arguments, the most, for some people, it's the characteristic that literally, Peggy, makes the hair stand up on the back of some people, especially those in special ed and a lot of practitioners. Okay. But before I say it, I'm going to say it one more time. When I started our talk, what did I say about all reading programs? That they all what?
They focus on the reading and the R&D.
But I all said in terms of value, they all work. Correct?
Correct. Yeah.
And then I said, but not for all students.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm not here to put down a program or a philosophy or anything. If you believe in it, I believe in it. Okay. I'm not your enemy. But for some people, this is when it really gets scary. So what does PD stand for? It's a term that I've coined based on my experience, based on my 2 million hours of direct instruction, based on my teaching, based on my going out to meeting some of the leading experts in the field. PD stands for the phrase phonetically deaf. Phonetically deaf. And what I mean is this. There are some kids out there that if you dedicated the next 120 waking years of your professional life, they still aren't going to hear and And you go at, and they go at. And you go around the room and finally say the words cat, and the kid will say, why didn't you tell me so in the first place?
Absolutely. Yep.
You see, there's a misnomer out there, and the belief is it's this whole issue with this back to basics movement. The back to basics movement is the reason why you didn't do this, you never got phonics. Well, you got a lot of kids. Let me share with you the research. There's the illusion and there's the reality. When you start looking at chronically struggling kids, which is my population, okay? I'm working with the kids who are in the bottom 10 percentile. I'm working for special ed, limited English speakers, you name it. When you look at those kids, what they find is this. You ready for this? You find that 70% of those kids, especially when they're in grades 3, 4, 5, and higher, 70%. Now that's greater than half, right?
Oh, yeah.
70% of those kids had adequate basic decoding skills.
Yep, I believe that.
And what they found were 30% of those kids were good decoders with poor comprehension. 40% of those kids were strong decoders, but very, very slow readers.
Yeah.
17% couldn't do it well. And 9% had significant poor word recognition through decode. Now, am I antiphonic? No, but I am antiphonic first for some kids. If you're a parent of a deaf, or if you look at deaf kids, one of the things, look, I'm going to teach you how to ride a bike one of two ways, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Both ways are equally effective. So I'm not here to tell you one way other than the other. But they're two totally different ways of achieving the end. And what's the end? Riding the bike.
Riding the bike. Yeah.
That's our goal. Okay. It's Saturday morning and we're going to the garage, and I'm going to lay every bike part out on the garage floor, and I'm going to start to drill you, Peggy, in wheels, spokes, handlebars, gears, brake pedals. And Peggy, I don't care if it's an hour, I don't care if it's a day, I don't care if it's a week, a month, a year. You ain't getting on that damn bike until you tell me about wheels, spokes, handlebars, gears, brake pedals. I got a question to ask, Peggy. Is there another way that I could teach you how to ride that bike?
Just to get on it.
Get on it. And once you get on it, and once you feel what it feels like to ride that bike, I'm going to quickly tell you about handlebars, gears, and brake pedals.
Yep.
The first is a skills approach. The second is a process approach. My methodology and my approach is process oriented. I get them on the bike immediately. I get them to experience what it feels like to read with meaning from the first. And I'm not saying it, again, I'm going back to ain't bragging if you've done it, from first day. And we do it through an approach in which we use comprehensible text. And let me also share with you, and my program is based on the notion called VPR. And VPR is a new acronym, and it stands for Visual Pattern Recognition. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, I have.
Okay, and what that means, and I want your audience to understand this, that visual pattern recognition is an innate ability. We're born with it.
Yeah.
We don't create it. We're born with it. It's an innate brain-based ability in which the brain makes sense out of what it sees visually. Mm-hmm. It actively seeks recurring patterns. And the more recurring the pattern, the more it recognizes it.
Yeah.
A sight word is a pattern.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
A phrase is a pattern.
Yeah.
And what we find is our kids actively see this. Now, let me share with your audience a couple of things. Number one, the opposite of phonics is not whole language. Whole language and phonics are just like skills of riding the damn bike. They're two different things, and they have strengths and they have minuses.
Yep.
Pluses and minuses. The opposite of that also is not flashcards. Because what you get when you utilize flashcards is what's known in the trade as a splinter skill. Are you familiar with that term?
I'm not familiar with the term, but I do understand it because
And let me
it's
share
not
with the
associated
audience
with
a
anything.
splinter skill to the audience is a skill that your child develops because it's taught over and over and over again, whether it's sounding words out, whether it's seeing a word on a flashcard. What you'll find in splinter skill is that when you ask them to do that specific skill, they can do it.
Right.
But they can't generalize it. So what you have is a situation where they can do a whole stack of flashcards and then see the same word within the passage.
And they don't
recognize it.
Yeah,
that's a splinter skill. And the same holds true for sounding out. And just like you have kids who have flashcard stack splinter skill, you have other kids who you put a passage in front of them. They can sound the words out with 95, 100% accuracy. So they get it all correct. You follow me?
Yep.
But you watch them as they're doing it. They're reading aloud. They don't pause at commas. They don't stop at periods. They read with a monotone, expressionless voice.
Yep.
They get all the words right. And then when it's done, you look them dead in the eye and you ask them, what did you read? And they look you back and they say, I don't know, beats me.
Yep.
Because they're thinking that reading is getting the words right as opposed to gaining meaning from the printed page.
Right. Exactly.
Now, let me give your parents 3 words.
Okay.
Reading is relating. Reading is relating. You cannot read for meaning something you cannot relate to.
Yes.
So if your child can't relate to it, they can't read it for meaning. And your job then as a parent is to ask this question, why can't they relate to it? And what can I do as a parent to help them to relate to that concept so that then when we read it, they'll understand it? Is this helpful?
Right. Yes, exactly. Because the words on the page don't mean anything unless they are comprehending and they're internalizing it, because they're going to forget it very quickly unless they know what they're reading about. You can't retain something that you have no background knowledge or something to hook it to in your brain.
And Peggy, that's why I love talking with you, because you've automatically triggered ED. Now, PD is phonetically deaf. ED is environmentally denied. And what you just said is exactly what we're talking about. Reading is relating. You have kids that are coming into classrooms and reading material with a significant deficiency in general background knowledge, or you have a lot of kids who are coming into the classroom where English is the second language. So they're coming in with pronounced cultural deficiency because they have not experienced what first generation English only students experience. Does that make sense?
It does, because I used a Singapore-based math program for my middle child, and they talked about prawns, and he turned and looked at me and he goes, I can't get this math problem. I have no idea what that is. And I changed it. I said, okay, let's take this many superheroes and this, and he got the math problem instantly because he could relate to it. And so, yes, it's just that simple. Is giving them.
Let's continue because we're doing beautifully. Is this helpful?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And what's the third characteristic? LD. And LD doesn't stand for learning disabled. It doesn't stand for learning different. LD stands for language deprived or language denied.
Oh, yes. There's a lot.
Now, I'm going to give your parents and to give them a one word secret to dramatically elevating the reading comprehension of their child, regardless of grade level, regardless of anything. Would you say it's worth, again, listening to me run my mouth if I can give your parent that one word secret?
Absolutely. Everything you've had to say is nuggets of gold. So keep going.
Are you ready? Here we go. This is the key. This is what I've done. By the way, I'm married for 43 years with a very tired looking woman who is still going to get rid of me. We have 5 children. Those 5 children gave us 14 grandchildren. They all live within 5 miles of our house. We found that the biggest misnomer out there is that stupid phrase, empty nester. We have no idea what that means. But from the day we first found out 43 years ago, when my wife found out that she was pregnant with Tess, I capitalized on this one word secret. And I taught it to my kids, and my kids teach it to their kids. You ready?
Yep.
Vocabulary.
Yes.
Vocabulary, vocabulary, vocabulary. Now, let me share with this. This is not just a secret to success in school and comprehension. It's a secret in life.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
Let me ask you this question. And you said that you have an assessment test that you share with parents, which is great. And I have an assessment. Call it a reading attitude assessment, where it's a quick online assessment to see how your child feels about reading and how they think.
That's awesome.
It's fun. When it comes, wouldn't it be great if there were an assessment out there that we could give to entry-level adults, for example, that would serve as a predictor for how well they're going to do in an organization? And on the basis of this, we can predict who's going to be the CEO all the way down to the floor workers. Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah.
Do you know we've had that since 1947?
Really?
And you want to know what it is?
Sure.
It's a vocabulary test.
Hmm.
Researchers found that when they gave a vocabulary test, that the CEO had the greatest vocabulary as opposed to those who were at the lower ranks.
Interesting.
So we are by design a highly verbal society.
Absolutely.
We are judged the moment we open up our mouths. And I want parents to understand this, because a lot of times your child is given an IQ test. You're thinking that your child is limited here. Let me share with you this, and I say this all the time. If your parents and you could imagine being on a sidewalk in any town, USA, and you're walking the length of a lawn, and that lawn has a white picket fence as its border, and you have a little stick, and you're walking along, you go from one picket to another, to another, to another. Does that make sense? Yep. And you just keep on, and all you can see are the pickets. And I want your parents to understand this. This is my gift to them. If each picket was some facet of intelligence as we know it, and we have this whole block of pickets, conventional IQ tests probably measure 6 pickets, maybe 10.
Wow.
We're beating ourselves up and beating our kids up. Do you know, I'll give you an example. I'm going to date myself. And I'm doing it, and I'm doing it for impact. And this has been a long time since I've said this, and I do not mean it in a condescending way, and I don't mean it as a slur, but I'm trying to show you to illustrate a point.
Okay.
And when it comes to intellectual disabilities, cognitively challenged, they used to use a term that fortunately we never use anymore, and you know the term, it's the R term.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, do you know that when I first started teaching many years ago, in the trade, they talked about the 6-hour R. Have you ever heard that? And I'm not going to
heard that at all.
Okay. And do you know what they were saying there? The kid was only R the 6 hours he was in school.
Interesting.
You take him outside of school, and he was making money, selling things, doing whatever he was.
Yeah. Because
Is that not amazing?
it all had to do with the comparison academically than what the child's true capacity was. And that really doesn't measure a child's ability to succeed or not succeed, how they do in a classroom.
It has nothing to do with success.
It's been proven over and over again.
Let me give you an example, a personal one. My wife, I lost my father-in-law about 4 or 5 years ago, and it was quite a shock, and he was just really a really nifty guy, and he was by trade a tool and die maker, and so he but he was not formally educated. At that time, he had at best a high school education. And he always equated my degrees with intelligence, that I was the smart one and he was the tool and die maker. No. So I asked him one day, and I'll never forget this. I said, Frank, man, I mean, tool and die, when you have to make that die, he says, oh yeah, you've got to make it to specific specifications. You have to be, that thing's got to run on that machine for 1,000,000 times. You can't lose anything. It's got to be within 1/10,000th of whatever it is. And I said, and you created these things? He said, oh yeah, that was easy. I said, now wait a minute. How'd you do it? He said, oh, it's easy. He said, they tell me what they needed, what the specifications of the die, what it had to look like, its appearance and everything. And he said, then I'd go to sleep. I'd go to bed that night. And in my mind, I would blow that. And now remember, we're talking about something that fits in the palm of your hand.
Right.
All right. He said, I would blow that die up in my mind to where it was 30 stories high. And then I would just walk around inside the die and go up and down the different flights of stairs until I knew how to create it. I said, what?
Wow, that's fascinating. Yeah.
You did what? Okay. Now, I'm sitting with the man who, in my opinion, in the world of non-verbal intelligence, is a freaking genius.
Right.
And he's beating himself up in his life because he had a limited vocabulary and thought he wasn't as smart as the other guys. Makes no sense.
Yeah.
Let me continue. So, what else did I find? And this is for the parents and for you. This is Frida Ebert's work. She's a tremendous researcher out at the University of California, and she said text, T-E-X-T, text, the print, does matter in the teaching of reading. And what she found was that, and what I found, and that's why one of the unique features of Failure Free is that we we have pioneered not only visual pattern learning, visual pattern recognition through serial learning, but we have also patterned through the utilization of comprehensible text. Comprehensible text. Now, let me share with you what I mean by that, and to parents as well. And this is really important to the parents. What my research has found is that traditional text, the way most people write, carries with it what I call reading comprehension roadblocks for our kids. It prevents them to be able to easily understand it because there are roadblocks that the writer used in a normal, typical situation that is not easy for our kids to relate to. So what are the roadblocks to reading comprehension? Uncommon names, dates, and places.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Figurative speech.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Idiomatic expression.
Mm-hmm.
Abundant use of pronouns.
Yes.
Awkward sentence structure.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the biggest one: inappropriate or not enough repetition. And I want to share this. What my research has found as well, and Chuck Hargis, University of Tennessee, he did work. He found that as the literacy level of kids decrease, the need for this particular skill proportionately increases. And that skill is repetition.
Yeah.
The lower the ability level, the greater the times they need to see something in order to recognize it independently. Traditional reading material is not repetitious enough for our kids.
Yeah, I believe that.
Especially with the back to basics movement, where they're saying we're only going to show the kid the word once. They either sound it out or they don't. And let me also share one more thing to your parents too. Again, I go back to the notion of it ain't bragging if you've done it, but you also have to look at research. Okay. I'm going to give you a research-based, viable alternative, and that's all I'm providing is alternative to a phonics-based instructional approach. Are you ready for this?
Yep.
No, I'll tell you what. I'm going to give you 2 words, and you're going to give me the third.
Okay.
Okay? Dick and
Jane.
Dick and Jane. Are you ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
It is probably, would you say 50 million is a pretty good number?
Oh, yeah.
Is it big? Lots?
Yeah,
Okay.
especially when you're talking about people, maybe.
50 million people. You ready?
Yep.
We're taught to learn to read through Dick and Jane.
Mm-hmm.
They learn to read with expression. They learn to read with comprehension. They learn to read with confidence. They learn to read with pleasure. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. It was
Ready for
relatable.
this?
And
You ready for this?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Let me ask this question. You're doing real well, Peggy. Do you know when phonics was introduced during the Dick and Jane process to the students?
Probably when they were maybe in 3rd or 4th grade.
Never.
Never. Really? Okay. I just know that when I started reading in the mid-70s, that they started a whole word. And that made it even more confusing.
So what am I saying? I'm saying that there are viable alternatives.
Mm-hmm.
So if your kid isn't doing well on this path, there is an alternative path available to them. And as a parent, your question should be, okay, the good news is my kid's failing. And it's good news because now I know one way that doesn't work.
Right. Exactly.
Now, what's happening in schools is just the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
You get people who say the only way to fly is back to basics. We're going to teach them the basics. When they don't get the basics, then we're going to give them a tiered intervention. We're going to give them some supplemental work. And guess what the supplemental work is? More of the basics. When that doesn't work, then we're going to put them in small group. More of the basics. Then we're going to give them one-on-one of the basics. Now, what happens with that, and where I get angry with that, is it's painfully slow. And then we're going to lose a lot of these kids. Right. Because they are not a necessary condition of learning how to read.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, the kids get more and more frustrated, and then they shut down, and they may still physically be there, but mentally they're not anymore.
No. So I asked this question: what would happen if we took critical academic vocabulary and put it into a highly structured format, and where we introduce the words and put the words and phrases, the phrases into sentences, sentences into paragraphs, and we taught one page of a story one day, and then continued it the next day and the next day and the next day, and what would happen? And as I said before, as God is my witness, and I know that's a strong statement to make to you and to me as well, as God is my witness, I couldn't find a student or an adult that didn't have an immediate and successful reading experience.
Yeah.
And that's why I called it failure free.
That's awesome. Well, I would love for you to talk a little bit more about the program and what parents can get for resources if they head to your website, because our time is unfortunately up, and I know a lot of them are just getting a kind of a hint of what you're talking about, and you just have so much knowledge. So I'd love for you to talk about what they'd find on your website. And
well, here's the nice thing. There are 3 different programs, and we have a self-pacing, online, multi-sensory format, but also there are scripted lessons. If the parent chooses to teach their child, we use what we call a blended learning philosophy, where we preview the material, we introduce the vocabulary, we read that part of the story to them. It takes about 5 to 10 minutes. Then they go online with exactly the same thing that we were taught, and then there are downloadable PDFs for paper and pencil reinforcement activities. We teach 27 stories of increasing complexity that we take the student from 0.0 all the way up to mid-5th grade in our Joseph's Readers. For those parents out there who have kids that can read some 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, we have Verbal Master, which is an accelerated vocabulary program that takes you all the way from mastery of 6th grade all the way up to SAT, ACT. And then for chronically cognitively delayed kids on the spectrum, we have Life Skills, which is a school to career transition program. And it's based on 4 themes, 21 stories: independent living, how to drive a car, getting the facts on drugs, and how to get a job. Now, what the parent can do is when they go to www.failurefree.com, and they can go through the page, and at the bottom there is a sample lesson that they can try, and it's pretty self-explanatory. I do, however, ask the parents to stay there and watch how they do, because one of the beauties of my methodology is if it works, you'll see it right there. I mean, I don't care where they're coming from. You'll see if it's a good fit within the first couple, 2-3 lessons. In addition to that, there is on the website, a parent can sign up for a free consultation. I am very willing to talk to them, but I don't want them to waste my time. If they're going to go in there and they want to do it, then let's do it, and we can set up a condition in which we can do it. But don't waste my time by putting your name on there and then not doing it, because my time is valuable. How do we do so far? Let me share with the
Good.
parents real quickly. Language, 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 language. You're a language teacher first. You're a reading teacher second. You're a content teacher third, and you can't change the order. Reading is relating. The other is input precedes output. What that means is this. There's a huge, huge, huge difference between what your child can understand and what your child can express. Do not water down what you're getting into their system on the basis of what they're expressing. Just like you learned with your 12-year-old, everybody is different. When it comes out is one thing. What you have to do is get it in. Language, language, language,
Absolutely.
language. Read to your child at night. Watch their eyes. The eyes are the mirror of the mind. If they don't understand, then you have to ask the question, why can't they understand it?
Right.
If you want to know if this is suitable for them, read a passage. And if they do understand it, then whether they can read it or you read it aloud is the whole thing. You are a language teacher first. You are a reading teacher second. You are a content teacher third. There is absolutely no reason. And I don't care if your kids are on the spectrum. Now, my goal is to help you to achieve allowing your child or young adult, and if they're Down syndrome, I got a lot of Down syndrome kids that are adults that it's ready for them to learn how to read. Okay, they can go back and read. Life skills is perfect for them. But the bottom line is, our goal is to allow your child to read for meaning with expression commensurate to their cognitive ability. Okay. And that's important too. So if you've got, God willing, if you've got some kids where you know that they're developmentally delayed, the bad news is they're developmentally delayed. The good news is that they can still have a successful reading experience commensurate to that level.
That's very cool. Yeah.
So let's have realistic expectations.
Yes.
And I require, for failure free to be successful, I require a developmental age of about 5, maybe 6 years old.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
If they have a developmental age of 5 to 6 years old, we're cooking. And if a parent is looking for something to actually, if you give me 20 minutes a day and then we do the software, 30 minutes a day, we're seeing, I'll give you one study. We just did a study in North Carolina.
Okay, this will wrap it up.
Okay. And what we found was we took kids on the North Carolina end of grade reading assessment who were testing below the 10th percentile. And their average percentile score was 6 percentile points. After 30 minutes a day, self-pacing for about 30 days, their post-test was 35 percentile points.
Wow.
I'm done.
Really good. Yeah, no, that's awesome. And so, yeah, I would just encourage all of you to check out Dr. Joe's site. We'll have that link in the show notes, failurefreereadingonline.com. And yeah, check all that out. I'm super excited to just introduce this resource to our families and for just all that you had to share. And even the kind of change in thinking us parents have to make in order to get on the right road to help our kids with reading success. So thank you just for sharing not just your expertise, but your heart for struggling readers and their families. It's really easy for parents to get discouraged, but you've reminded us over and over again that there is a way forward and we just need the right tools and right mindset. So thank you.
We're ready to help. I'm here ready to help you. It is an honor to have this opportunity and to share the good news with your parents.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you. And thank you to all of you for listening. If today's conversation has stirred a new hope in your heart, don't stop there. Be sure to visit Dr. Joe's site at Failure Free Reading Online, as well as come join our community at Homeschool Heroes at spedhomeschool.com, where you can find resources, support, encouragement, and a community that believes in your family's journey. Remember, your child's story isn't written yet, and every step you take today brings them closer to tomorrow's success. Thank you for spending time with us today. And if you're encouraged by this conversation, please subscribe, leave a review, share this episode with another parent who needs a little extra hope. And until next time, keep leaning in, keep believing, and keep empowering your homeschool journey. Take care and God bless. Bye, everybody.
This has been Empowering Homeschool Conversations, provided by SPED Homeschool, a nonprofit that empowers families to home educate diverse learners. To learn more, visit spedhomeschool.com.